Guess what? Today is episode 10. This is episode
No
10.
way, dude!
Yes,
Double
yeah,
digits.
well, that's right. You mentioned that before that you wanted to get to double digits. We are now hitting double digits after we took a little hiatus. We had some things to do, and now we've kind
Yeah.
of come back with some awesome content today. And as usual, I am David Jones-Schlarty, developer relations engineer, joined by my wonderful and ever-present co-host, Carter Rabassa. Hello, Carter.
Hey, David, how's it going?
It's
Hey,
going
everybody.
well.
I am your co-host. I'm David's co-host, Carter Rabassa. Also work in developer relations on the Langflow team at IBM, and we've got an awesome episode ahead of you here today for the flow. So we're joined by Max Gerber. Max is an awesome human being who I actually hung out with in San Francisco just last week for SF Tech Week. He's a product engineer at Stytch. We'll talk a little bit more about what Stytch does, but suffice it to say that they're like a company building incredibly interesting solutions for developers in the identity and authorization space. If you've ever needed to build an app that someone needed to log into, like Stytch is where you can start, but they can do a lot more than that. And the reason that David and I wanted to have Max on is because in a world of agents and MCP servers and AI, once you kind of get past all the demos and once you get past all the fun, you start to have really hard questions about like, hey, like how am I supposed to authorize an agent to do things on my behalf, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
like if we want to live in the Star Trek future where, people are, ordering Uber Eats, via agents, or, I don't know, having an agent, go through your email to summarize things for you, you start to have really reasonable questions about how do you secure that? How do you make it safe and secure so that people can feel like they're not just handing out their email to anybody. So super excited to have Max join us to talk about that. So like I said, Max, we're going to get into your company for a little bit, but I wanted to. So by the way, it was awesome to see you in San Francisco for Tech Week. So Max's company Stytch, they organized a really awesome panel. A panel for developers focusing on MCP. And I was lucky enough to be invited to participate in the panel. But there was Dom Kundal from OpenAI was on the panel, and I'm forgetting his name, but the chief of software from Vercel was also on the panel. And we ended up having a really, really interesting conversation about like real world issues related to MCP and engineering applications like on that platform. So that was super, super, super awesome. Thanks for having us. But Max, as David knows, and as all the viewers of the flow know, the first question that we always ask of our guests is, what is the first experience that you remember and that you can think of where you actually like wrote a program or wrote some code?
Yeah. Did you guys use graphing calculators in middle school, high
Yeah,
school?
Back in the
dude,
day.
hold it. So I used
Wait,
a TI
Carter,
80.
Carter had an abacus. Come on, Carter.
No,
You had an
stop it.
abacus.
No. I used a TI 85, and
That's great.
You got an 85?
I did.
Oh man.
I'm gonna guess that you had a TI 83.
Yeah, I think I had an 83 in middle school and an 84 in high school. And I think sometime, fifth grade or so, I was playing around on the 83 and I realized that you could like write programs. And I didn't really know what that was. So I went home and I Googled it and I figured out that you could, make little screensavers and program little games and then
Oh,
kind of cheat
wow.
on your math homework by putting the equation in and making a little program out of that. And that was my first experience, kind of like dipping into what is a for loop. And then later on in high school, I was on our robotics team, and we
Oh,
used this language called NI LabVIEW for like robotic control, where you want to press a button on a joystick to make the robot drive forward. And so it's a graphical language, like very similar to Langflow in the sense that you have nodes and you connect the nodes together.
Yeah.
But you use it to build like process automation in the real world. The high schoolers use it to make robots drive around.
That's awesome.
So
That sounds a lot like Scratch. Have you ever heard of Scratch, Max?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my kids went through a phase where they were doing Scratch programming. It's kind of a drag and drop thing, and it's actually like really it was invented by folks at MIT. I mean, like it's
huh.
a real legit sort of
That's
like,
cool.
yeah, it's a legit sort of IDE. And I
Hmm.
think they came up with like really great visual metaphors for like, for loops and conditionals and stuff. Um, but that's awesome. So I won't spend too much time on this, but like this is how you know the difference between how old Max is and how old I am, because Max is telling us that when he was using his TI-83 in middle school, Google existed. And when I was and when I was hacking on my TI-85 in a year that I won't mention, that's when Doom had come out for the PC.
Wow, that's right.
Um, and I spent months trying to like implement like a crappy version of Doom on my TI-85. And then sadly, I was kind of showing it off to some kids at lunch, and this bully, some like typical like I don't know, high school bully or something, came up and kind of snatched it away from me and took the batteries out. And then it was all gone. There's no
Oh, so it didn't have any persistent memory in the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Oh,
no Git, no source control,
Oh
like
no.
no backups. Yeah, I was pretty broken up about it. But I think ultimately, like, we live in a world where being a nerd in high school has worked out very well for us.
Yes.
So I
Yeah,
don't,
for sure.
I kind of like I don't sweat it too much now. But
Yeah.
that was a bitter pill. So Max, can you tell us a little bit about Stytch, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of problems is the company trying to solve, and what are you working on?
Yeah, so Stitch is a consumer identity and access management platform. And that means if you go and you put a website out on the internet and the website has content and you want to protect that content, generally you need to have users. Generally, your users need to authenticate into the platform. And so we started out building tools around handling that sort of use case because there's many different ways a user can authenticate online. They might be using their passwords, they might be using an email magic link, they might be using a standard like OAuth or OpenID Connect or SAML. And then there's other things that you might want to layer on top of that. Some users have MFA requirements, some users using passkeys, WebAuthn, and there's a surprising amount of depth to building out a login page. And so we started building all of these composable tools to allow people to build their own login pages and develop this user model. And this is all about taking data from kind of outside systems, taking data from, Okta or Google or people's emails and passwords and pulling them into your system and creating this
Mm.
user model. And what my team owns is taking that user model and that user information and starting to push it out to external systems. So we help people become OAuth identity providers. And we're probably going to talk a lot about OAuth today. And we're going to talk a lot about why it's important to AI and MCP. But the general idea is that a lot of these AI agents, they want to be able to access data on your behalf. They want to be able to
Mhm.
say,
Yeah.
I want to go and get an access token for Max Gerber and then call this API and get Max Gerber's data so I can go do something interesting with that. So we build APIs and toolkits and SDK components to enable that kind of flow, to take people's existing data and push it into systems like ChatGPT and Claude and other AI agents that are popping up.
Yeah, and David, actually, I don't know if you know this, but I used Stitch to build like a simple but like interesting like authenticated experience for Cascadia JS attendees.
Oh, did
Um,
you? That's super
yeah, like
cool. Okay.
yeah, well, because I wanted to I wanted to create I mean, you know how it is, like, yeah, like I think there are many times when web developers move beyond kind of like brochureware websites,
Hmm.
where you want to create personalized experiences. And for us, we kind of had like a long list of these personalized experiences, but one of them was we wanted to create, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but some events that developers register for, they'll kind of build you like a really cool virtual ticket.
Hmm.
And it's like virtual, it's sort of basically like a web page. But it's cool, like it's a virtual ticket, and it'll maybe have your face on it, your name, whatever kind of ticket you got, a ticket number. But then what's kind of fun about the virtual tickets is that, I mean, if you sort of implement the web page properly, you can share the virtual tickets on social media, and there's like OG image tags where like, like, hey, I just got my ticket to Cascadia JS, and then it'll using the OG image tags, it'll kind of like render that image like in
Right.
the social
Right.
media post, right? Whether it's like LinkedIn or Twitter, or I guess it's X nowadays. So that was, and it was, and I wanted, Stytch was really easy to use. So like it kind of made a lot of that super simple. And then there's this stuff that you can get for free, right? So like if you enable, depending on the provider, I guess we'll go into this detail later, Max, but like, you can enable all these different providers. I think I just enabled Google because most people
Yeah.
have Google as a provider. It'll pull down their profile photo, or whatever profile photo they've set on their account. And then I have access to that image, right? So I can use that image. So also the other thing, we'll use this to generate a virtual ticket, but then we also build out this like conference directory. So you can go to cascadiajs.com like /2025, and you can see like a grid of the faces of all of the people that are attending the event. But anyway, sorry, like small plug for Stytch, but it was, as a developer, as someone who is, building these things like by myself, is really easy to use. But I think this is a perfect transition point, to kind of talk about OAuth, because I think, in order, I think Max would kind of take us on a guided journey. So you can go ahead and share your screen, Max. But I think like before we can start talking about how do you enable these interesting use cases for agents, we probably just need to get everyone grounded in how OAuth like works in the first place.
Yeah,
So
I feel like
you can go ahead and
OAuth is having a moment again now with MCP, right? Because OAuth's
It
been
is.
around forever, right? Like, I mean, Max can give us all the
sure.
details. Like, it's been around forever. But until recently, I really never had to get into the details of OAuth, and now all of a sudden I'm having to learn this stuff. So it'd be kind of interesting to
Yeah.
take a look.
It has been phenomenal because I've been working in OAuth for about 8 or 9 years now, essentially my entire professional career, and it hasn't been an extremely exciting area of interest. And then this last year, it's really, really blown up. So I've been having a ton of fun. So I'm going to go. We built this is a little sample website, uses Stytch under the hood.
Nice.
So I can go and I can log in here. I've got a couple different accounts. I go and I select the organization I'm a part of. But the interesting thing about this website is it's also an MCP server. So I can come in here and create different notes, and I can say hello. This is my note, and then maybe I'll put in a smiley face here. Doesn't really matter. But if I go and I say I have data that I've stored in this website, I want to make this data available to an AI agent. I want to make this data available in
Right.
ChatGPT so it can search my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I'm in ChatGPT, and then if you go into settings, apps and connectors, and then you want to scroll down, and there's a developer mode toggle that you can click on, and then we get this create button up here. And so I can come in and say, we're going to drop in this MCP URL and say we use OAuth, and I trust this application because I made it. And I'm going to go and hit create. And now ChatGPT is going to initiate, connector name already exists.
Sure.
That's what happens when I do a little setup ahead of time.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's all good though.
Yeah, so now when I go in and I hit connect, ChatGPT is going to initiate an OAuth flow. And now I'm logged in. Stytch knows who I am, and because Stytch knows who I am, Stytch can also handle the OAuth flow on my behalf as an application developer. So the application developer, this is a little React component that we ask them to drop in, and they can show it off to their users. And now when the user goes and hits allow, we're redirected back to chat.
What we just saw there, you're talking about that's something that Stytch says, prompts them to, is that part of the SDK? Is that like something as a developer, if I'm using Stytch, then that's like a little widget, a little React widget or something that I can get?
Yeah, exactly. That's like a one-liner drop in, and you can build that experience, that UI, and then we'll also get into kind of customizing it later. But now, so we've created an MCP server, and we made that MCP server available to ChatGPT. And now I can go and say, hey, ChatGPT, can you use this tool that's been made
Yeah.
available to you?
Right.
And chat will go and look at all of the available tools. The MCP server should be in there, and it should invoke it. And we'll see what exactly it does in a second or two. And so that was a very, very quick overview. We didn't really talk too much about the OAuth part. We didn't really talk too much about the MCP part. Now,
Yeah,
while
but
we're
that
waiting for,
yeah,
yeah.
and while we're waiting, but like also like I can't I don't think I can see the URLs like in the browser that you're using, which is
Mm,
fine. It's okay. But I mean that authorization screen that
mhm.
where you clicked authorize was that like a stitch.com URL?
No, no. So that is a URL embedded in the application itself.
And okay,
And that's
okay,
a
cool.
really, really good point because that's a kind of a major product difference, I think, between Stitch and between a lot of the other
Yeah,
authorization approaches that people can take.
right,
Is Stitch's really a lot of the other authorization approaches you're taking your user and you're redirecting yourself to someone else's website and you kind of lose control over the user experience
right,
and you might be able to upload some custom code that gets embedded and extend like someone else's platform, or you might be able to upload css or styles or themes, but
right.
you're limited. It's kind of like almost like the WordPress model
Hmm.
Yeah.
versus like building your own website.
Yeah, for
And
sure. I mean,
so
I think, yeah, that's like, I think that's an
mhm.
important nuance because I think like a
Yeah.
lot of people who are listening to this and watching this, might be familiar with other like OAuth experiences that they've had where like it's kind of like it's like a there are two parties happening. There's sort of there's where you are, where you're starting, and then you kind of get redirected to like an authoritative third
Mhm.
party of some kind, and then you kind of get redirected back. And like I think that is something that's like very different about like the way Stitch has engineered it, right? Where you can from the user's perspective, like I'm only dealing with like the two apps that I care about, right? And sort of like I'm not aware that Stitch even exists, right?
Right.
As an end user, I'm just sort of like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've got like ChatGPT and I've got like Notely, and those are the only two experiences that I'm in.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think of Stitch as almost like a toolkit that you can use to turn yourself into an authorization server or into an
Right.
identity provider, as opposed to a standalone identity
Oh,
provider that gets,
okay. So that
spun
actually
up
ties
on
into a
the
question
fly.
from the
Hmm.
experience you just showed a minute ago, right?
Hmm.
Where it obviously prompted you. It's like, hey, you don't want to authenticate, blah blah blah. You did that, but then the experience kind of stayed. And you used OAuth, right? Like under the hood,
Right.
and the experience stayed right here in the app. And my experience of OAuth has always been this thing where you're asked, hey, do you want to authenticate with GitHub or Google or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And then inevitably there is some other like page that pops up, and then it's like this kind of clunky kind of thing. But I didn't see that here at all. So is that something with how Stitch like handles you're talking about not just being identity provider, but also having some control over the experience? Is
Hmm.
that something that Stitch was doing? Where I
Yeah, yeah. So Stitches, I think the way that we've structured the product makes it much easier to build smoother user experiences.
okay,
There was a redirect, right? Like ChatGPT
right,
redirected to Notely, but that was the only redirect that happened.
okay,
It's very common for you want to redirect, so you're going to go and redirect to the identity provider. The identity provider kicks you out to a login page. Maybe then you log in with a different identity provider, and you get these crazy chains of redirects that can sometimes come
yes,
up
yes,
with login. And we try quite hard to avoid that because that's not a great user experience.
So what we've got here, it looks like it didn't
Hmm.
just create the node. It looks like it populated it. Is
Yeah, so it created a note. It has all this sample context in here, and then I have to approve, ChatGPT to take this action on my
I
behalf.
see. Right.
But I'm going to go and hit confirm.
that's probably a good thing.
And now this will take a minute to churn, all set.
Mhm.
And if I go back to, that's my local demo, if I go back to my homepage here and refresh, then we see
Oh, look at that.
ChatGPT was able to access the data
Hey,
in my account.
that's awesome.
So one like I think an interesting belief. I think you're not going to like this belief. But one belief that I have is a lot of people right now are worried about building agents,
Mhm.
and I don't think that most websites need an agent
Yeah. I
because building agents is really, really, really hard, and it's difficult to do right. It's difficult to monitor. Everything is changing all the time.
Hmm.
Um, I could have an agent in here that helps me write notes or helps me go and look through and search my note history or whatever it is I want my agent to
Yeah.
do. Um, but I think it's much more reasonable and much more interesting for a lot of websites to think about becoming tools, becoming MCP
Yeah.
servers, and
Mm,
then letting the users bring their own agent to the website.
Yeah, I think that's super reasonable. Sorry, I thought you were going in a different direction, and I was desperately looking for like a spicy pepper emoji reaction, but unfortunately, like our podcast tool is only giving me like 5 things, so I can kind of I don't know, I can do that
you
or
can give one of
whatever.
those. There you go.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I mean, like, I can do like I don't know, party or something. Anyway, so they Riverside, if you're listening, please add the spicy pepper emoji.
Right?
Um, I think it's like super reasonable. But it's kind of funny. Like it's almost like sorry, the metaphor is so
Hmm.
terrible, but like a snake eating a tail or something. Like to me, like I
Mm,
don't even know what the difference is. Like if I'm like what you said, like having an agent that like I don't know, man, it like searches your notes or something. Like great, that's clearly an awesome use case for anyone who does uses note taking tools for like more than a few months or a few years. Like you need help like finding things. And like an agent or like some good semantic search would be really helpful. But then like where that experience like lives, like is it like a little widget like in the app, or is it like quote unquote, is it chat gpt, right? Is it like some externalized tool that I'm using to drive? Like I'm not sure that it matters, like I mean just sort of or like even like what like to your point, Max, I mean like what happens when chat gpt like build their own embeddable SDK, right? Where like, you can just like everything that you just did, like in ChatGPT, like you can embed it like on that website, right? So it's kind of circular. Um,
Maybe. Maybe. I think that the
yeah,
real interesting part, like, sure, ChatGPT could have where'd my tab go?
yeah,
ChatGPT can have an SDK that we drop in here that gives us a chat experience, but the
yeah. It gives us,
chat
yeah,
experience isn't the most interesting thing about the agent, to me at least. The most interesting thing is the ability to combine all of these tools kind of on the fly. So here, ChatGPT
yeah,
is only talking to my notes app, but you could imagine a world where you've got Claude Code running, and it's
yeah,
talking to my notes app that has my history. It's also talking to my deployments on Vercel. It's talking
right.
to all of the bugs that customers have filed. And it's combining, not just one website. It's combining, 20 or 30 different sets of tools and MCP servers
yeah,
in
yeah.
order to mix and match all the data.
I,
And
I I hear you, and like, but
mhm.
man, this is like, man, we could spend the rest of the podcast on this, right? Because like, well, like, I mean, like, for like, I always do this. Like,
Mhm.
forget about agents, right? Like, you're building Notely. I don't know. I don't know. You want to integrate Twilio or you want to integrate Stripe. Like,
Mhm.
you just want to integrate some third party thing like with Notely because like like when someone likes a note, I want to get a text message or something. You can imagine this, right? Um, okay, like back pre-AI, like nobody would have a second thought about that. They'd be like, yeah, I'll just integrate Twilio or I'll just integrate this, right?
Right.
Now we're just in this weird world where like it's like, well, like where should the cockpit be? Like where should like the driver be? Should it be in
Mm,
the app? Should it be in like in the LLM? And like I think I love what you're saying. I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense, but I think the lines are like really blurry.
yeah.
And I think that like, you can, like your example of like, oh, like I want to have the LLM be the driver because I want to integrate it with all the tools. Um, it's interesting, but like it's also obvious to me that like there are some integrations or some third party things that you'd want to do natively in Notely.
Mhm.
Because but anyway, sorry.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
this is fascinating. Look, this is what developers have to figure out, right? Because like forget about our jobs as engineers or even as product designers, like ChatGPT as a consumer product has changed like a billion people's expectations
The
on how software
expectations,
works.
exactly. Yep.
Sure, sure, sure. So
Yep.
then, like, so I think Max's point is really
Hmm.
great, where it's just like, hey, Carter, like a billion people are expecting ChatGPT to be the thing they use, and they just want ChatGPT to be more and more capable, right? Or or if you're an engineer, it could be Claude Code or something like that, right? Yeah, I think what you're saying is like definitely where things are today. I'll be curious to see like if that's like a sustainable thing, right? If like 5 years from now, like ChatGPT, because that's asking ChatGPT or similar things to become like literally like everything apps.
Hmm.
We're like, oh,
Yeah.
like draw me a picture, or like order me a Subway. It's kind of like, oh, so like all like think about the grid of apps on your phone, right? Like it's kind of imagining a future where like all of these squares like get collapsed into like just like the thing you talk to, right? But anyway, okay, we should get back on track.
Yeah, by the way, one thing about OAuth, so, using
Hmm.
OAuth under the hood, and I know you're going to talk more about that. One thing I'm actually super curious about is now, again, OAuth has been around for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
but now with agents, with especially MCP, with needing to add more robust security layers to MCP and such, I've seen, matter of fact, we just came out of the Tech Exchange conference. I had a ton of conversations with folks, both like open source people, a lot of enterprise people, everybody is really concerned and like wanting better and more robust security for things like MCP. So my question for you, like especially in OAuth, like now that OAuth is kind of getting some spotlight again, it's
Hmm.
it's very relevant with some of these cases. Are there changes coming to OAuth, or is it the
Oh,
same old OAuth?
absolutely.
Right? Like,
Yeah, I have heard this refrain of, "Oh, OAuth has been around for a while.
yeah.
OAuth isn't really changing. Like OAuth is a solved problem." And in reality, OAuth is much more of an evolution than it's ever been like a single defined spec. Like OAuth is a working group in the IETF, and they've put out, I think, about 30 separate specifications in the last 10 years or so.
Oh,
And there's also other working groups outside of the IETF, like the OpenID Foundation, that put out specs as well. So OAuth is much more of a library than it is like any one document or any one paper. There's a lot of different, often conflicting opinions about OAuth, and it's very much a changing specification and changing
okay.
space. But MCP and AI are asking it to change a lot faster, and that's very exciting. The
Okay.
biggest coming change, I think, related to MCP, people are talking a lot about dynamic client registration
Right.
and about the security implications of that. And I think let's do a little dynamic client registration demo.
Yeah,
Okay.
man.
Let's
Let's get
see
into
it.
demos.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
nice.
So this is a little tool for managing different MCP servers. So I'm going to go and connect in the same way that ChatGPT connected. And I'm going to grant my MCP Jam instance access to my account.
And again, that's using Stytch under the hood for that
Hmm.
authentication we
Yeah,
just saw, right? Okay.
yeah. And if I go into this little auth flow, there's this really nice guided OAuth flow that's going to take us through all of the separate parts that go into setting up this initial connection to the MCP server.
Mm,
Because one of the really interesting things about AI related and MCP related OAuth, as compared to like the more traditional like third party application development of the past, is in the past, if you want access to an API, you're going to go to a developer portal and you're going to register your client. And you're going to say, oh, I'm using Strava. I want to build a heat map display. I'm going to go into the Strava dashboard, developer settings, register a client ID and a client secret. And one of the things that people were looking at with MCP is agents need to be able to access APIs without this pre-registration step. Because if
Hmm.
I'm, Claude Code or if I'm ChatGPT, there are probably going to be hundreds of thousands of MCP servers that I want to have access to in the
That's
end
right.
state. And it's not reasonable for a new agent developer to go into hundreds of thousands of developer portals and pre-register all of these client IDs and client secrets, and then store all of that information, somewhere. If you're downloading an npm package to run an agent, you don't want that agent to be hard coded with a ton of client IDs.
Mm.
And so dynamic client registration is an older standard that wasn't incredibly popular previously, but it says basically, hey, we can create clients on the fly if you give us the client information. And so when an MCP flow kicks off, actually, it's fun if I pop open. If I try to connect to the MCP endpoint, I get an error
Hmm.
because I don't have a token.
Yeah.
But if I go and I open up the dev tools and I look in the headers, I see that this contains a www authenticate header. And that
Hmm.
www authenticate header has a URL saying, hey, there's a protected resource metadata that tells you what is this OAuth resource you're trying to access.
Hmm.
And if we go back in here, we can see, so this protected resource metadata says, well, my resource is the Notely demo website, and I have an authorization server. It's login.notelydemo.com. And the authorization server has its own metadata endpoint.
Mm.
Okay.
And this contains all of the information that we need to do the rest of the OAuth
Oh, look at
flows.
that.
And because this was all discovered through metadata endpoints, through these special well-known URLs, which are
Yeah.
guaranteed to be the same everywhere on every single website, that means that a client can, without any interaction from a user, like all they need is that first initial MCP URL dropped in,
Yeah.
they
Huh.
can discover who the authorization server is, what are the permissions it supports, where do we go to request an access token, where do we go to register a client on the fly? Everything that you need to go through the OAuth flow from beginning to end is declared, statically here and discovered dynamically.
So all the
So,
normal things that as somebody who's had to set up OAuth before, right?
Hmm.
All those URLs, all that stuff it's like the painful part of it, right? I have to go find the authorization endpoint. I have to go find these things. I
Hmm.
go paste it into whatever the tool is. What I think I just heard you say is like, no, in this case, you can actually discover that information through metadata. And
Hmm.
I no longer then have to do that up front, right?
Right. Yeah.
well,
Exactly.
well, and let me double click on that, right?
Yeah.
So Max, like, what's the specific use case here? So, like, if
Hmm.
if I'm an MCP server author, is that
Hmm.
the right starting point? Like, I want to ship like a really cool MCP server, and I want to enable my like these users to like bring their own client, or basically
Hmm.
inform me like, oh, like, hey, like I want to be able to, or is it more for like, is it MCP server authors, or is it more for like agent authors? Like, who's the person that wants to enable their end users to like bring like arbitrary providers?
Yeah, so everybody benefits from the standard. I'd say that the people who want people to bring their agents are MCP server authors that have data that they want to make available. And then on the flip side, the agent developers want every MCP server to adhere to the same standard because that means that they don't need to write a lot of glue code. If they work with one
Right.
MCP server, they
Right.
should work with all of them.
Okay, so this is okay. That makes sense. So like so both parties benefit. But then what you're kind of showing us is more like, hey, I'm building an agent. I want that agent to
Hmm.
be maximally capable.
Hmm.
I want my end user to be able to. I mean, this is like when I say agent, I just you can just substitute ChatGPT in your brain, right? Like,
Hmm.
like I'm building something like ChatGPT and building an agent. I want someone to be able to like show up with something I've never heard of called Notely,
Hmm.
and then based on these standards, I want the orchestration of like integrating the ability to interact with Notely to be, to be easy, right? And I don't want to write the glue code, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
so long as these standards are adhered to, like I can use an SDK, perhaps a Stytch SDK, or maybe even a different SDK to deal with like the orchestration of all of these things that you're showing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Any MCP client, any AI agent can talk to any MCP server, and these MCP
Mm,
servers can use any authorization server, and everything that adheres to the same standard just plugs and plays into each
Yeah.
other. And
That's good.
yeah.
that's really, really, really nice.
Yeah, it seems like it's
Cool.
moving the onus more on, like, if I'm gonna build an application that I want to expose over MCP, right? Then the onus is on me, as I understand it, to set this
Hmm.
up to say, hey, I'm going to conform to this standard. That way,
Hmm.
anybody can just very easily connect to me. They don't have to worry about going and getting all these configuration parameters and stuff for my service. They can literally just talk to it, and it, you know,
Yeah, I mean
self-discovers what it
right. I
needs.
mean the MCP server author has
Yeah,
to implement
yeah.
all this stuff.
Which
So
makes more
Yeah.
sense, right? Because if you want your thing to scale and you want people to use it and you want to have some security in there, set this up right out of the gate, and now everybody can connect significantly more easily than they could have before.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this, we talked a little bit that there were concerns about OAuth, and there's ways that the OAuth standard is changing. That's going to be the next step right here, this client registration step.
Okay.
mhm.
So essentially, the MCP client or the AI agent sends this payload, says, "Hey, I exist. I have a client name, and I have this redirect URI." And it fires this off to the authorization server, and the authorization server says, "Great, phenomenal. Here is your client ID." But this was created on the fly, often with no authentication. And so, how do you know that the client is who they say they are? Like, if the client says, "Oh, my name isn't MCP Jam, my name is actually Claude or ChatGPT,"
Mm,
um, when we go and we show this consent screen to the user, we show them, information about who the client is that they're granting access to. But we don't really know if that information is true if the client
mm,
is, registering it on the fly. Versus in like the traditional client model, there's a human, they create a developer account, we have like an email we can go talk to, maybe we've got a manual approval process.
Right.
But the whole idea behind dynamic client registration is we're doing things on the fly.
right.
And
So
so
then
that
so then what do you
creates,
so what do you do about that?
yeah.
Because like
So
you could say I'm OpenAI, or like whatever, right?
yeah, I'm OpenAI. My redirect URI is https evil.com. Please send me a.
Yeah.
I mean, when I try to spoof something, I'm definitely going to use
Mhm.
evil.com. No one
Yeah.
suspects that, right?
Yeah.
So there's this emerging standard CIMD. It's currently an IETF internet draft.
Mhm.
And this is an alternative to dynamic client registration, where in dynamic client registration, the client will go and push a blob of data to the server and say, "This is me. This is who I am."
Mm,
With CIMD, when the client kicks off an authorization flow, the client is going to pass in a URL as the client ID. And
yeah.
then the URL is going to be the thing containing the client metadata.
Mhm.
Right.
And this means that we're now trusting the URL and the domain name to
Yeah, sure.
be real and valid. So if I say, "Hey, you're going to grant access to client.dev or chatgpt.com," I can now show this domain name to the user and know that it means something.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this way, like if someone tries to grant, access to evil.com, then in that consent screen, we're going to say, "Hey, are you sure you want to redirect to evil.com? Like, is this the application you thought it was?"
Yeah.
And this allows us to have much better, like, display more accurate information to the end user. And it also means that authorization server developers and application developers can reason about these clients in a much better way. I, as an application server developer, might say, "Look, I only expect people to connect to ChatGPT, Claude, and maybe like 3 or 4 other clients, and they will all have URLs that I can approve ahead of time." As opposed
Mhm.
to this dynamic process where clients are getting created on the fly, and you really, you kind of have to let them all in, or you let none of them in. The system doesn't work.
Right. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Very cool.
So,
But then Max, I'm sorry, like
mhm.
is this is CIMD an alternative to the thing that you showed us before, or is it sort of like does it augment it?
It will be an alternative to
Oh,
dynamic
okay.
client registration. Both of
Okay.
these are mechanisms used to create a client on the fly.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
which one should developers that are listening like pay attention to? Right.
look, CIMD, it's very, very early days. It's still an
Yeah.
internet draft.
Okay.
I think that developers who are really excited about it or really dislike DCR should get involved in the community, join the working group, and voice support and help figure out how should this work.
Okay.
But if you're trying to do something today and get something out the door today, DCR is what's widely available and
Well,
what's
but
supported.
exactly. That's what I was going to ask you. You said like supported by whom, right? I mean, like where does DCR support like actually like exist? Where is it
Mhm.
implemented?
Yeah. So any authorization server that is playing around in the MCP community, Stytch certainly, a lot of the other players in the space, a lot of the open source stuff, Keycloak, everything is supporting DCR in order
Yeah,
to make MCP more accessible.
So it sounds like
totally.
DCR is the way to go now. But at
Yes.
some
Yeah.
point in the future, if CIMDB or CIMD becomes a thing and a true competitor, then maybe that'll be different. But for the time being, it's DCR.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. So now we've registered our client on the fly. We got back a client ID. We can now kick off an authorization flow and say,
Mhm.
I am client ID, D96. I want access to these scopes. Please redirect the user back to this location at the end of the day. And then if we go through here, we get a nice little consent screen.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
haha. But if
Get a
I
logged in
go,
We
mouse.
check
know
this out.
things
I
are
go and I
real.
look in the logs. It
That's
gets
right.
logged. There's my authorization code.
Nice.
Ah.
And then now we can use this authorization code and we can exchange this authorization code for an access token. And then we can
Mhm.
use this access token to go talk to the
Sure.
MCP server and say, I am
Y
Max.
Whatever,
Please give
right?
me
I mean,
Max's data.
yeah, I mean, once you have the access token, at that point, like,
Hmm.
you can just make direct calls and, it's scoped to whatever you're allowed to do, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so I wanted to show a little bit of the code and also alternate ways that this can work. Um, if we jump in here,
You read my mind, by the way, because I was gonna be like, I was gonna be like, so where does the Stytch SDK and that kind of stuff like come into
yeah,
play here? So
yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'm going to show one tiny slide, real quick, real
Only
quick
one,
slide.
Max.
we give you one.
So
This better be good.
we
No.
think of going back to that model of there are different ways to integrate with Stytch, and there's the Stytch is positioned differently from other players in the space, where we are direct APIs and SDKs that drop into your existing application, as opposed to
Mhm.
a separate website that you redirect your users to. Uh, there are three primary ways that developers integrate with us.
Mhm.
They can use like out of the box UI components, which is what we've been looking at this whole time.
Mhm.
They can also, if they don't like our UI, if they want more flexibility, they want to use their own brand elements or their component libraries. They can also use their own UI and call what we call our headless SDKs,
Okay.
which are
Yeah.
essentially like client libraries in the browser attached to the current logged in user.
Mhm.
And so I log in as Max. My Stytch client can now go and take actions as Max and can, update my email, but it wouldn't be able to update somebody else's email.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we've got the admin backend SDKs, which allow developers to do whatever they want with any of their Stytch data at any time, like complete total control. Also, the most responsibility. So it's kind of depending on the amount of flexibility you need. You can go and start with the front end components, which are like good, sensible defaults. And then as you need more flexibility, as you want to do more things with the platform, as your integration progresses, move down the stack and start bringing your own UI and then start bringing your own backend logic.
Cool.
I feel like
Cool.
you should call the backend SDK the Spider-Man SDK. I'm glad. I think Max got it. Critter's like, dude, what was that?
You mean like the thing where like you're pointing and the Spider-Man
No,
people are
no,
pointing at each other?
with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, man, that's like that's
Yeah,
exactly
that's great.
actually that was like polite laughter from Max. Like, man,
That's
that's a
great.
lot of layers to get there. But
I
okay.
mean, I feel like Max got it. I don't know. I'm just
I
gonna believe that.
I
It's
was
okay.
originally thinking it was like a web of
Right.
Ah,
complexity.
damn it! No, we
Yeah.
got
Sorry,
But
sorry,
no,
David.
great
Alright.
power, great responsibility is
Yes.
a phenomenal pitch.
See, David, if you want that joke to land, you got to make a joke about Uncle
Mhm.
Ben, right? Like that's the
Yeah. I
Spider-Man
mean,
is
I
too
haven't had
many other
enough dad
things.
jokes this episode, so I just wanted to get something in there. Honestly.
Yeah.
All right,
So
So what are you
go.
shipping us here,
here,
Max? What is this?
yeah, let me get that font way bigger.
Yeah.
So we're using our Next.js SDK right here.
Hmm.
And I have kind of two parallel implementations. And the first one's going to be really, really simple. The first one is we imported our identity provider React component, and then we can pass in, different styling config, different
Hmm.
colors. And this is what we're using right now. And we're just saying, drop in this component, give it your styles, and then I've been playing around on notelydemo.com. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Goodbye, ChatGPT. Now we're going to play around with a local copy of Notely. So this is running. Can you see the URL?
Yeah,
No,
local
Yeah.
I can.
3001. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so this is our local copy, and whenever I change the code, this should recompile and change on the fly. So right now we're
Hmm.
using the base B2B identity provider, and if I pop open the network tab, I can see the Stytch API calls that this thing makes. And
Hmm.
primarily,
Mm.
we have two endpoints. We've got this OAuth authorized start, which is like a pre-flight endpoint that says, yes, this client is valid. This is the client information. These are the scopes that you can grant it. And then we're going to have an OAuth authorized endpoint that we call at the end to finish the OAuth flow and redirect the user back. And all our UI component does is it wraps these two API endpoints with some sensible defaults and some pretty UI. But if I am an application developer and I want to do something different, I want to add additional business logic, I want to change the UI elements being present, I want to have more customization over the look and feel of the flow,
Mm.
I can just call those endpoints myself. And so what we have down here, we're grabbing our Stytch client. The component initializes. We're going to call OAuth authorized start, and we're going
Hmm.
to stick that in the state. And then when somebody hits approve, we're going to call OAuth authorized submit, and then we can redirect the user to the end location.
Yeah.
And now, so that's pretty much all the Stytch specific logic, those couple of lines there. And
Hmm.
then everything else, like how I want to go and shape this UI interaction and get people through the flow, like I now have complete control over the look and feel of my application.
Yeah.
And so coming back over to here, let's say we swap out the identity provider for our custom implementation, and we go back to this
Oh, cool.
page. Now we've got a brand new UI.
Right.
Nice.
And so this is the same thing for every part of the Stytch platform. It's the same approach you can take with our login screen or sign up screen. Like the UI components will get you 90% of the way there. They will get you out the door. They will get you to your MVP. And then when you want to go and change the brand, change the look and feel, then that flexibility is there for you.
Mhm.
One really, really, really underrated aspect of this. Let's go and where was I running? Localhost. No, that's the OAuth authorize. And I'm going to log out. So we have all of these different login mechanisms defined.
Mhm.
And what we see really, really common is people are trying to figure out how to optimize their login flow, where they might have a bunch of people who make it to their website and then they go through login sign up and then they just drop off. They
Hmm.
never actually compete the login sign up flow. And people wonder, well, what if I change my OAuth providers? What if I swap out who is available? If I
Hmm.
add in, log in with Microsoft or log in with Google, or I put in
Yeah.
passwords instead of email magic links, like, does that mean I get more users at the end of the day?
Hmm.
And because Stytch is all code, and because Stytch is code inside your application, that
Right.
means that we work with your feature flag system or
Ah,
your experiment system.
right.
So here's our login page over
Yeah, I
here.
could
Hmm.
see this being pretty flexible for A/B tests and such, right? Because
Hmm.
you have complete control here.
Yeah. And so we have here are the OAuth options.
Yeah.
What provider do you want to have?
Oh, look
And
at
so
that.
it's very, very, very easy for someone to come in and say, well, I'm going to A B test. Does GitHub outperform Microsoft?
Hmm.
And now I have Microsoft here instead of GitHub.
Right.
And it's
Right.
very easy to A B test. How does email OTP compare to email magic links? And previously this was OTP. Now if I go max.stitch.com, that
Yeah.
sends me a magic
Mm,
link. Put this back in. Now it sent me an OTP code.
Hmm. Hmm.
got it, got it.
And
Nice.
you'd think that there would be a right answer of, what is the best login method for conversion rates or the best login method for, this kind of use case. And what we found is every customer base is going to be completely different.
Mm,
And the thing that is best for somebody is probably, sometimes it might be the exact same thing for your current case. Sometimes it might be something totally different, depending on, how like the demographic of your target audience, depending on is it a mobile website that people are interacting with or a native website. And
Hmm.
so we provide kind of an experimentation platform for people to like A/B test her, sure, how should I log in? But
I
then
think that's really I
also.
think it's really cool,
Mhm.
Max, but sorry, free idea. Like, seriously, like, because you have, you mentioned that you have front-end SDKs that, like,
Mhm.
I don't know, basically, like, you do zero thinking. You just drop them in and they work really great, right? Create a product or a feature that people pay for, where you guys do it. Use AI, like, basically, like, slap some AI on it, and, like, analyze the traffic and figure out, like,
Mhm.
who's clicking on what, and then just sort of like optimize that and just sell that. I'll buy that. I'll be your first customer.
That would be really cool. Yeah,
yeah,
right now we focus on integrating with other people's integration or testing platforms. It will be a lot of fun to build our own.
Yeah, no, that's cool though. This is
so
awesome.
yeah, so one thing I'm really curious
Mhm.
about. We've talked a lot. You were showing some MCP stuff. We talked a lot about OAuth, as far as that. But are there other like are you seeing other security patterns emerging with agents, with MCP and such? Is it just OAuth? Is like, of course there's no auth, right? There's also use like an API key, right? But the things I'm
Mhm.
seeing emerging there are really I see the most robust thing is so far OAuth. Is there anything else?
Yeah, there are a couple standards. I'd say there are two different audiences and camps that have emerged in terms of trying to roll out AI and MCP. The camp that I and Stitch is in, like the area that we're focused on, is customer facing applications trying to roll out AI features to end users. And so if I want to get my data into ChatGPT or I want to get my data available to agents owned by the users, then OAuth is like kind of the best way to do that
Hmm,
today. And I don't really see
Yeah.
a lot of alternatives there. People are using things like API keys. I got a whole rant against API keys. I think that they are wonderful for you and me and probably everyone listening to this podcast, but you're never going to get like mass market adoption with
Yeah.
API
right, right.
keys. Like I can't get my dad to use an API key or open the
Yeah.
terminal. Like
It's a good point. It's a
it's not
really
going
good
to
point.
work.
Yeah.
It just
Um,
it seems like it's funny, like, we have a lot of conversation with people about, like, what is an agent, or what are agents good for? And it seems like, at least now in 2025, most productive way to think about an agent is to kind of, think of it as like, kind of like a person. Like maybe not. Or like some limited and scoped person, but fundamentally like a person that like can speak the language that you speak, and if you give it access to tools, it can kind of do things. But that's kind of that's like fairly productive for a lot of use cases. And then from that perspective, if OAuth was basically designed for humans. I mean, it's a little clunky, but it's the best we have, right? It's like it's sort of the best that we've come up with to like handle delegating to some third party like permission to do things on your behalf. It's what we have. It seems like a reasonable thing to use for agents. I don't know. That's just sort of like my take on it. Like, it's you can kind of like get galaxy brain and imagine like, well, shit, like agents, like like why there should be like a more efficient and like kind of next generation way to handle these kinds of tasks for super smart like supercomputer machine things. And that maybe that's where we'll go, where we'll get to in a few years. But it seems like for now, like just in terms of understandability and like adoption, right? Like like
Mm.
OAuth
Yeah,
exists.
it's there. Yeah.
It's just there. It exists. Like people more or less understand it. As Max like pointed out, like there's a bunch of like activity in terms of augmenting it and sort of improving it, and then some kind of like related standards that are happening that kind of make it more and more capable. But I don't know. It seems like pretty reasonable. This is where like people come up with like people want to like get rid of HTTP and they want to replace it with something. No, I mean they really do. I mean I'm not kidding. I
Hmm.
mean like there's a bunch of people that are like, oh, it's so inefficient and like TCP sucks, and like there's a bunch of people that, well, because like if you're allowed, if you didn't care about like adoption, you could design way better protocols with today's technology. But like you do have to care about adoption,
Right.
and like I think it's like it's useful for us to like build on the shoulders of giants rather than trying to kind of like rebuild a stack from the ground up. Max, we're starting to wind things up. This is super awesome. But hey, quick question for you. Like, what did you use to implement your MCP server?
Yeah,
Is
I
it like a
generally use
framework or a
the
tool or?
TypeScript SDK. Um,
Okay.
Model Context Protocol, like the GitHub organization, they
Mhm.
maintain a bunch of SDKs in like first party in different languages. I use the TypeScript SDK for pretty much all my projects. I'm a big
That's
TypeScript
awesome.
guy. There are other MCP
Yeah.
server like additions, like enterprise versions of the SDKs that have sprung up
Mhm.
that also look pretty interesting, that are a little bit more batteries included, but I think everything that I use uses the base SDKs.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's cool. I wanted to kind of share that with folks because like the more time I spend playing with MCP servers, the more I like want to build my own. And sort of like, I mean, understand like it's kind of funny, like the protocol itself, and people kind of like nitpick and whine about it or something, but like I think it's actually really cool. And the manner in which the MCP server declares what tools it has is interesting to me because that's a completely dynamic process. Like it's the nature of the protocol is that like you connect to my MCP server. Like I could tell Max that like I have tools A, B, and C, and then I could tell David I have tools E, F, and G, right? And it's just sort of it's like whatever I tell you I have is what I have, and like it kind of makes me think about like what are the use cases for kind of like dynamically generated like I know you're laughing, but it's kind of like but
Well,
it just makes you think, like what like
I'm
there's a lot of reasons that would be a bad idea, but then there's probably like one or two where that would be kind of cool.
yeah, I'm laughing because that's one of the hot topic issues in the MCP community is, are
Yes.
dynamic tools a good idea?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have you seen anything about like rug pull attacks?
Yes, yes. No, no, trust me, I get it, right? It's like we talked about this at the panel, right? Like so
Hmm.
we talked about this at the panel where like one of the things that people want out of MCP is like a registry. Like you want to be in the same way that we npm install or we pip install. It's like, hey, I
Right.
just want to I just want a registry. I don't want to like scrawl the internet looking for lists of MCP servers.
That's right.
But then the topic came up that like, look, like unlike static code that is uploaded to a registry like npm or the folks that handle pip, you can't do that with services. So, so if someone, this came up, Max, I don't know if you were there, but we were talking about versioning. It's like, well, how do you handle
Yeah.
versioning? And like, what happens where like me, like I want to pin my app to a specific version of an MCP server, right? Because I don't want them to make a bunch of breaking changes. And then the realization was like, well, look, I mean, like you can't guarantee that will happen because it's just a server. Like they can tell you they're giving you version 1.2, but like ultimately, like what you get is what you get. So yeah, those are all good points. But I think back to what you were this standard with CIMD. Is it CIMD or CIDM?
Hmm.
CIMD.
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 Yeah, I mean, like you're building on the backs of domain trust, right? And I just think that like I think really smart people are grappling with these issues, but I think like you kind of end up coming back to like things that are working today, like in other contexts. So it's kind of like, hey, like consumers know what a domain is, and like they understand like they can trust Google.com or they can trust Stytch.com. Um, like I think that we'll probably end up getting there when it comes to like MCP registries and even versioning. Where it's like, well, look, I trust Twilio.com, and I trust that if I ask for version 1.2, that they will give me 1.2, and that they will not rug pull me. But that requires trust, right? Like there has to be kind of trust there. So anyway, we're at time. This is like a super awesome conversation. Like I wish we had 30 more minutes.
I know. I
Max,
feel like
like
we could go more, couldn't we?
I know. Well, it's okay, Max. Don't worry. Like we already have like a short list of guests that we want to bring back. And given how fast the space is changing, you're going to be on that short list. But before we go, like we talked about a bunch of cool stuff. Is where can people like follow up on this, or like what resources should they check out?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just do the whole screen.
Yeah.
Cool. So one takeaway I want people to have from this is if you're running an online service, you should probably be an OAuth provider. If you're an OAuth provider, you can run a remote MCP server. This means that users can bring their own agents to talk to their data within your system, and they're going to be able to do a lot of really, really cool things with that. Check out notelydemo.com is our product demo. And then we have all of the code that was shown here on this URL if you scan this QR code. Um, you also go to Stytch.com, make an account, join the Slack. I'm there. You can DM me and email me and ask me all sorts of MCP and OAuth questions. And I love to hear from people and hear from customers and help people build MCP servers.
And I can tell
That's
you in
awesome.
conversations I've had with Max, he will absolutely talk all the detail you want to about MCP and OAuth. So, and I mean that as a compliment. That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And like, folks, if you're listening to this on your podcast player of choice, or maybe watching on YouTube, we'll make sure to share these URLs in the notes below. But yeah, other than that, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Max, thank you so much for joining us on this very special 10th double-digit episode of the Flow. It was really kind of you to spend some time with us, kind of demystifying something that's like kind of complicated and kind of gnarly. But I just think it's like we've moved this is like so critical and so important,
Yeah.
like these days you could kind of get away with like building a web app and doing some like basic like login stuff, right? But like now in this era of MCP servers and agents and the need for them to talk to each other and integrate with each other, like to your point, like if you're building a web service, like you should almost start thinking of it as like I'm building a tool for agents, right? Like no matter
Hmm.
what it is. Like
Good point.
if you're not thinking like how could an agent use this like as a tool for performing a task, like you're just missing out on a massive set of use cases. So yeah, so thanks for demystifying this for us. Thanks for the resources, and thanks for joining us.
All right, everybody, and